Magandang araw sa ating lahat at malugod ko kayo tinatanggap sa Season 2 ng ating Usapang K, kung saan ating pag-uusapan ang mga espiritual na pananaw at mga kwentong kapupulutan natin ng aral.
Ngayon po ay simulan natin ang ating programa sa isang panalangin. Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak at ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Panginoon, marami pong salamat at muli niyo kaming pinagsama-sama upang makapagbahagi ng aming mga pananaw at mga puro-puro, lalo na ngayong gabing ito na pag-uusapan namin ang isang napaka-importanting tao na maaari hindi lahat ng mga tao ay nakakakilala. Kaya nga po ngayon sana'y makahanap kami ng inspirasyon sa kanyang buhay kay Pier Giorgio Frassati. Nawa ay bigyan mo kami ng inspirasyon ng banal na espiritu upang mabuksan ang aming mga isipan at ang aming mga puso. Nang sa ganon ay makita namin ang iyong kapangyarihan lalo na sa aming buhay. Hinihiling namin ito sa ngalan ni Kristo, aming Panginoon. Amen. Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak at ng Espiritu Santo. Amen.
Magandang gabi ulit sa inyong lahat.
Araw sa
ating lahat. No? Tayo ay ngayon ay malugod nating tinatanggap itong programang ito at meron tayong mga bagong guests, brother.
Yes, so magpapakilala sila, no? Pero pinapangunahan ko lang po ang ating mga tagapakinig na ito po ang unang beses na ang ating programa po ay magiging English. Ayan, kasi po yung ating pong guest ay taga-Canada. So mamaya, no, he will introduce himself. No? But first, before we introduce Father, we first ask our co-host to introduce himself.
Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Ang pangalan ko ay si Ace Arceo. Isa po akong lay Dominican din dito sa UST. And of course, teacher din po ako ng Religious and Values Education. So, ikinalala ko po na maging part nitong programang ito. At sana, I'm also wishing with our audience na may matutunan din ako at mapulot din ako sa programang ito.
We invited Ace because he's a representative of the youth. And in the parish, we are planning also to organize our Dominican Youth Movement. And Dominican Youth Movement, actually the patron saint is the guy that we will be talking about. And I'm pretty much sure that our guests would be sharing about the life of this saint. So we introduce our guests. Could you please introduce yourself, Father?
Certainly. So my name is Father David Belushi. I'm a Dominican from the province of Canada. I live and work in Vancouver with my Dominican community and where I teach at Catholic College, Catholic Pacific College. And this is my second day in the Philippines. I'm very happy to be here in Manila, St. Thomas.
Welcome, Father.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do you find the Philippines?
So far, it's the traffic looks like a challenge.
And the weather?
The weather on the warm side.
So you came at a time during El Nino. Yeah, correct.
But otherwise, the people, I found the people to be very, very friendly, very warm, very welcoming. Certainly, this I found among the people, all the people I've met so far.
Certainly, you are still adjusting to the weather, to the time even. And to everything. Is this your first time in the Philippines?
Yes, it's my first time here in the Philippines. I've been to Asia, to India, Singapore, several other Asian countries, but it's been a long time that I've wanted to come to the Philippines, and so finally God's providence made it possible.
Yeah. What are you doing in Vancouver as a Dominican?
So I teach at a college, it's called Catholic Pacific College. And I teach, among courses, I teach Catholic spirituality. Catholic spirituality is an important course that I have. But other courses include scriptures, church history, virtue ethics, St. Thomas Aquinas, moral theology, and medieval philosophy.
Wow, quite a good topic.
How long have you been a Dominican, Father?
Since 2004. Since 2004. So exactly 20 years now.
Were you a professor before?
Yes, I was originally I was teaching linguistics, and so from linguistics, then I went into philosophy, and then from philosophy, of course, we led to theology, and that's where I'm at now.
In which part of the Dominicans that you wanted, you know that you are focused at? I mean, you went to become a Dominican for a purpose.
I think there were two things about Dominican life that I found very attractive, and that was that they took their studies, or we take our studies very seriously, but the studies have an aim, and the aim is ultimately to preach the gospel. So the objective of studies is not just to be an academic, but it's to help us preach the truth to the society that is waiting to hear the truth. That's one aspect, and the other is when I first met the Dominicans, their conventual life. I liked their time of prayer together, the brothers having to pray. This was very beautiful because it was mutual support. Prayer is like this mutual support for each other, and it really brings out that aspect of religious life that is very rich.
Yeah, speaking of the Dominicans, we are going to talk about a Dominican himself. But can we call them a third order or a Dominican, a member of the Dominican family with Pier Giorgio Frassati? You know, you're because he has a book. No? Because he has a book.
Father has a book.
with the title of Pier Giorgio
Frassati, Truth, Love, and
Sacrifice. So we invited Father David for him to explicate, or they could explain more clear to us who this Pier Giorgio Frassati. By the way, we have named a building here in UST named after him, the Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati building, the home of and the patron of the senior high school, and where also the CICS is located also. No? We have there in the 22 story in the España camp, the España building named after him. So we are very glad. No? We are very glad to know that you have written about Pier Giorgio Frassati. Can you tell us a bit of him?
Well, I can tell you a lot about him.
Just a gist, so that you could ask questions.
What's interesting is my motivation, because often I'm asked, what made you like
what made you like
Pier Giorgio Frassati? Because when I started, I really knew nothing. I knew nothing about him. And the first thing I thought, I was an assistant novice master at the time, and I was looking for a figure suitable for the novices. And I came across Pier Giorgio Frassati in our library, the Dominican library. And so I thought, like, well, why is he a Dominican and why is he blessed, right? And so the first thing was trying to see what made his life Dominican. And this is what I write about, a whole chapter on his Dominican spirituality. And then what made him a blessed. And it was an interest that I developed because I really knew very little about him. I wanted to find out more. So when I went to Italy, and this started in 2010, when I went to just outside of Turin, I met his niece. Her name is Wanda Gauranska, and she gave me the letters in Italian. So she knew that I was going to be writing on him. I wanted to start by looking at his letters. So then I translated the letters from Italian into English, just so I would know what he was like writing, what he was writing about, what were his thoughts, his feelings. And then from there, the book project took off, going into more details. Even after I read his letters, I still could not see, like, what
made him a saint.
Exactly. I thought, gee, I mean, there must be something else besides the letters. And so then that's when I began to read the testimonies that were collected by his sister Luciana. All these testimonies about what was written about him after his death. So these first-hand witnesses, these recordings that Luciana, this would be Pier Giorgio's sister, but she had made. She recorded everything that the witnesses had testified about his life. And so then reading these books in Italian, one is called La Carità, Charity in English, and the other is La Fede, the Faith. I think one of them is translated into English now. So based on these, then I was able to look at these first-hand witness accounts of what he was like. And then I was able to put together a very holy, a very virtuous person, a person who had a deep love for Christ, for the sacraments, and then I was able to put the whole book together with the sense of what making a Dominican a blessed.
How was he when he was young? I mean, what does he do, or how does he develop his spiritual life?
So his this is a good question, because it was the first thing that I wanted to know in the book was what was his relationship like with his parents, right? And his parents themselves, I mean, they were people with virtuous. They were people with values. I would say already virtue was present in the mother and the father that he transmitted to Pier Giorgio. The father being concerned about, we would say today, social justice, trying to build a more just society, concerned about a truthful, just society. And the mother, she was an artist, so he from her got the sense of beauty, the sense of art. And she was a very courageous person. And I think Pier Giorgio's sense of courage really came from his mother. She instilled this in him. Also the value of temperance. The mother would not allow them to have sweets, and he would even say in Italian, when someone gave him a sweet, mia mamma non vuole, my mother doesn't want me to, right? So very strict parents, basically, but with values that were transmitted. And then he was able to build on these values that he received from home. With regards to the relationship, he was very obedient as a child. He was not a troublesome child, very obedient. He loved his parents. One of the earliest letters is writing to his father, where he believed he had hurt his father and hurt his mother, based on what the teacher said. And he's only about 8 years old when he writes his letter to his parents in the home, and he's feeling very guilty about this. So already at a very young age, he had a sense, this very refined conscience, the sense of what is the right thing, what is the wrong thing, to make changes when you do something wrong, and then to also apologize for having hurt someone when you've done something wrong. So it's the first letter we have where he's expressing this guilt for having hurt his parents, and it was nothing really serious, but he took it very seriously.
But he is also an ordinary child looking at his parents.
Sure, yes, he had an ordinary childhood in the sense that he had a sister he played with, he fought with, but he was, he was an obedient child, but we don't get a sense that he was a mischievous child, but an obedient child.
Because many people would say that being a saint means that you need to be isolated. You need to have a holiness that people cannot even touch you and cannot be conversant with you. So Pier Giorgio Frassati is like any
very human
saint.
So can you say, Father, that the role of the parents, really, because nowadays, of course, a lot of parents, especially listening to us, some of these parents would not have that too much time with their kids and just let them play with the gadgets and all. But with Pier Giorgio, can we say that really that the parents taught him well?
And very
influential in his life. By the way, he belonged to a upper class family. Did he belong to an upper class family?
Upper middle.
Yeah, an upper middle class Italian family, yes.
Were they political in the sense that they are into politics, like running into politics now, or just the press? The father was in the press, right?
Yeah, the father was the founder of La Stampa, an Italian newspaper that still exists. He originally studied law in Germany to be a lawyer, but he believed that change was necessary in society, and he could not make the impact that was needed as a lawyer, so he figured the newspaper, the media would be the best way through newspaper to make an impact on society, to bring about change. And yes, he was, I think, Pier Giorgio's political interests were, even though he and his father had different political views, he was certainly influenced by his father as far as being politically interested in politics and being politically engaged.
Where did he get the Catholic and being that like? I read that he loved praying the Rosary, the adoration of the Blessed Sacrament.
Yes, too.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question, because the father considered himself an agnostic, and this is what his sister Luciana writes when she's writing on the family. She refers to the father as an agnostic. But he was a man of values. Even though he was an agnostic, he had values. We would call him today like a humanist. He had humanist values. The mother, she was more religious, but not a devout Catholic. She simply made sure that children received the sacraments, received the proper moral education. They were living a sacramental life. But it is interesting. It raises a kind of theological question. In fact, what leads the person to a deeper spiritual life than what they received as children? So he received something, but he went much further than what he received, and the only explanation was grace.
Yeah.
That's the only explanation.
I think even in psychology, they are having that debate whether it's nature or nurture. Is it like the genes or the atmosphere, the home upbringing that influences the
Because
kid?
people are saying that the children can only be influenced by the parents. And when they are looking at the children, they also always look at the parents and what the parents are doing. But in the case of Pier Giorgio Frassati, although he was influenced by his parents, but he has his own value, that he nurtured based on the devotion to the Eucharist and to the devotion to the Blessed Mother.
Was there a person, Father, like a priest who guided him, a mentor?
There was a whole spiritual progress in his life. If there was someone in his family who maybe had a religious impact on him, it would have been his maternal grandmother. Her name is Linda Ametis. He was quite close to her. And that would have been a member of the family who had religious values that would have had some impact on him. But what happened was, I guess you can call this providence as well, he had to repeat Latin when he was about 12 years old. He left the state school as a result of needing to repeat the year, and his parents sent him to a private Catholic school. So at first he was in not public, private, but not religious school. It was a secular school. And then, so they sent him to a Jesuit-run school. So this Jesuit-run school had certainly an impact on him, because there he would have been influenced by a Jesuit whose name was Father Pietro Lombardi, who was also his spiritual director. And there it was there when he was going to this called the Social Institute with the Jesuits, where he started daily communion, which was not a common practice. This was introduced by Pope Pius X in maybe around 1908, where frequent communion was encouraged. Before, it was not the practice, and his mother was not keen on Pier Giorgio having frequent communion, because she said he's going to just it's going to become a habit and lose its meaning. But it was the one time that he was quite resistant in what his mother had to say, and he told Father Lombardi, listen, I want to go to receive frequent communion, but my mother is resisting this. And then eventually he convinces her, Pier Giorgio convinces her, I think with Father Lombardi's maybe intervention, that he can receive frequent communion. So there you can see the influences. And also at the Social Institute where the Jesuits were, they had Eucharistic adoration, the Rosary Confraternity, the Apostolate of Prayer. Pier Giorgio got involved with everything that was spiritual. I mean, he just devoured everything spiritual. So this really would give him animation spiritually. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Please, you want to ask?
I'm just fascinated on how, just as Father said a while ago, the ordinariness of his childhood. I mean, as I teach students in my classroom, when we're talking about saints, we're talking about saints who have this background of a higher or extraordinary life, like Saint Catherine of Siena, Saint Thomas Aquinas. But as I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking or reflecting on Saint Pier Giorgio Frassati's early childhood life, I mean, it's kind of interesting, and at the same time inspiring, most especially for this generation, for for the youth nowadays, that we can actually have that kind of growth in our home. that we can actually be, we can achieve this holiness, even though internet and modern society is having these new things that the students are, the youth is into, like TikTok. But now, Blessed Giorgio Frassati, through his childhood life, the youth nowadays can be inspired that it's possible that we can be holy despite of this modern age. We can achieve holiness despite of the new things, no? And we have this somehow like boundary for the youth that they're somehow they have this second thought of coming to church because they thought this is for adults, this is for people who really have the interest to religious things. But Blessed Giorgio Frassati destroyed this boundary and showed to us that even children nowadays can actually live as holy as what he had in his life. Yeah. So I was really inspired by that thought. Yeah.
Maybe the main thing about the modern thing that we are looking at. Faith is not something of the past, but faith is also of the present. Because Pier Giorgio Frassati, he is not someone who is on the 18th century or 16th century. He lived in the 20th century. That being a saint, being holy, is not something that you could. It's not about Jurassic. No? It's not Jurassic faith that we live faith according to the present moment. And he lived in the present moment, Father. You know? And in fact, one of his sports is climbing the mountains, verso l'alto, going to the up, to the high. So it's not just about just praying and isolating yourself. In being holy is not just isolating yourself and praying alone, but being with the people. I read one of those he is fond of doing is giving something to the poor, giving something to those who are in need, Father. Can you tell us about that? No? When he is giving more to the people rather than to himself.
Okay, so holiness really, it comes down to the choices we make, and we have to emphasize choices, right? Virtue is not something in the head. It is a concrete act. It is a result of a disposition to concrete acts. So the acquisition of virtue means that this is the path to holiness, right? The path to holiness. How is this virtue exercised? Well, you give one example. For example, his charity towards the poor, reaching out to the poor. He wasn't just aware of poverty, he did something about it. There's always a question, what are we doing about it? He does something about it. He goes out into the slums. There he was involved with the St. Vincent de Paul Society. On Friday nights they would visit the poor. He would bring them maybe medicine, maybe food, maybe listen to them. This is an act of charity, but this act of charity is also a choice. I choose to go out and exercise charity. I choose to go to Mass on Sunday or during a solemnity. So virtue is a matter of making choices at the end. And this is something that does not change, whether it's 2,000 years ago, whether it's 2024. I choose the path of sanctity, or I can refuse the path of sanctity. It is a choice that is always there, and it's a choice that is open to us. And the thing about Pier Giorgio is, of course, he was not born virtuous. No saint is born virtuous. We grow in virtue. We acquire virtue through concrete acts of virtue. And this was his case. The example of the going out to the poor was this concrete act of going out, leaving his home, leaving his friends, and saying, I'm going to spend my Friday with the poor. While others could go out and have a good time, entertainment, amuse themselves. As we said, he came from an upper middle class family, which meant that he certainly had the money if he wanted to, the influence from his own family, if he wanted to take advantage of that. He never did. He never did. He used that free time he had when he was not studying to go, as one example, to reach out to the poor. The other choice that is very important that he made is that when he was with his friends, because we've talked about friendship, he was someone to be with friends, to be social, to be outgoing, receptive to others. However, his aim was to lead them to the faith. It wasn't, I'm going to have a good time with my friends. That's very selfish if it's only about me having a good time. It's through my friendships, I can lead these friends of mine, and that's what a true friend is. I can lead them to Christ. I can lead them to the church. I can lead them to the sacraments. This is a choice that is made, and that is a choice that he would make regularly.
So it doesn't mean, or maybe the holiness is leading others to Christ.
Well,
it's not just giving something to the poor, then you will feel blessed about it. No, but you lead others, or even you lead your friends towards Christ to the reading the scriptures, participating in the Holy Mass, saying the rosaries. So that these friends, kasi they are saying of the peer pressure. Peer pressure when you are in your group, no, people are saying, oh, do this, do that, and you feel you want to belong to them, then you try to adjust yourself. But Pier Giorgio Frassati is something else. He led his friends towards Christ, led the people to holiness. Not for him to be influenced by them, but he influenced them to be holy, Father.
Yes, and this is why I mentioned one of the earliest virtues that he acquired was courage. Remember, I mentioned courage, a virtue he acquired he had a very tough mother. He acquired this virtue of courage from the examples that she set, but also from what was reinforced in the home. This requires courage, to be able to say, I am not going to succumb to peer pressure. Even if I have friends, I'm not going to succumb to that pressure. That requires courage. Instead, what he did, when they would go on a mountain hike, and they knew this, that before they make the hike, they go to Mass. And if his friends were in some kind of shelter on the mountain, where he knew there was a chapel where they could all have Mass, he would plan this in advance. He would wake them up from the cold and say, it's time to go to Mass. Right? So this is courage. I don't care if they're asleep. I don't care if they're going to be upset that I'm waking them up. We are going to Mass. It's Sunday, and I'm going to wake them up. Right? So this is the courage that comes.
Coraggio.
Exactly.
But speaking of going to the mountains, he is one of the principles is persolato. Can you tell us about what is this persolato that he is speaking much more frequent?
So verso l'alto gives us a sense of to the summit, right? Verso l'alto. Sometimes it's translated in the plural, to the heights. But the idea is it's real in the sense that you're ascending a mountain, you're climbing a mountain, but it's also a metaphor to express going to God, right? So it's both the physical climbing the mountain, but a metaphorical sense that we are moving upwards, we are approaching God, right? So it's going towards the summit, which is God.
It's symbolical, no?
Yes,
He has his sports with going to the mountains, and he wanted to go to God through the sports, and he wanted to bring his friends going up to the mountains also up to God, no? Because even in the Bible, no, when Jesus would want to pray, he would go to the mountains praying. You want that?
Yeah. Well, I was just reflecting because one thing about him is he's very human. And I think that is what is very unique about Pier Giorgio. And that is quite surprising to know about him, especially for our young people now. That it's not just about praying the rosary and adoration. He had time to do sports. Did he have other hobbies that he did with his besides mountain climbing with his friends?
Of course, an important event in his life is that he starts this group called the Tibiloski, which means the shady ones, and they were started with his friends. Shady, well that's just it. These are very good Catholics, so it's sort of satirical to call them the shady ones, but it was started in May 18th, so in about 10 days it's the 1924, so in 10 days it's a century since the foundation of the Tibiloski. And so with his friends, he started this group, and it was a social group. They went on mountain hikes. You can see in the original picture, there are 10 of them. he starts this group with his good friend called Marco Beltramo, and but the aim is always the same: to be able to share the faith, to bring others to Christ. He always had this. So even in friendship, even in their treks on the mountain, he wanted to use this as an opportunity to share the faith. And he says, when he writes to Marco Beltramo, our friendship is found on this indissoluble rock, which is called faith.
Did he fall in love?
Yes, he actually
Or
did.
did he court someone?
He did fall in love. I mean, the word that his sister uses is to fall in love, and the name of the woman is Lara. She's in one of the pictures. She's in the Tipiloski picture, the founding of this Shady Ones group. So he does, and he does love her. And we know this from the way he corresponds with his friends about his situation with her, and also his sister, writing to his sister. He's very close to his sister. So the reality is this: he has met this fellow student. He loves her, but can he? And he sounds like he's even ready to marry her. The question is, would his mother approve?
Oh, yes.
This is the
It's
big
always.
question. So he develops this kind of like a strategy, I guess you could call it, to find out what his mother thinks of Lara. So the strategy is this: he tells his sister what's going on. His sister knows all about this. Luciana, she knows. So he gets Luciana to invite Lara over for tea.
Oh, so it was the sister.
So the sister
It's the bridge.
So the sister is the bridge, and then based on Pier Giorgio would not be there, so it's only the two with the mother. And then Luciana would see the mother's reaction, and based on the mother's reaction to Lara's presence, their exchange, she would know whether Lara would fit the home or not.
So Luciana would report to Pierre.
And she did.
And what was the report?
wording is this: it's a negative verdict.
Oh,
That's the
wow.
negative verdict. So from that point onwards, Lara, well, he knew that there was no future with her.
It's good because, even in the Philippines, the parents, so what they would say would really matter in the decision-making of the child, and even with their course in college, and also using bridge, to have that.
They say mother knows best.
Yeah, mother knows best. And it's good because he involved his sister in this process.
As a family, maybe they are talking about that with regard to the life of Pier Giorgio Frassati. You want to ask something?
For me, Father, I'm just mesmerized perhaps with regards to his thinking that he can also bring goodness or holiness even to his ordinary leisurely activities such as sports, such as going out with his friends. I mean, that's very important also, important point when it comes to friendship. I mean, these young people nowadays have lots of circles that we call circle of friends that we accompany with, but unfortunately, there are also cases that people who will be being involved with this circle is influenced by bad influences or bad actions, rather than bringing Christ to them. But it's a very good thought or point that the Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati was able to bring them to Christ, even in the ordinary activities or activities in their daily lives.
Yeah, ordinary teenage lives.
Yes.
But was there a time, Father, that, because we're talking about success stories, right? That he's always able to influence friends and people. Was there a time like he wasn't able to bring someone? Is there something in the letters like that, and he was discouraged or he doubted?
No, there's always this sense of hope in Pier Giorgio that the person, certainly in his group of friends, they all seem to share the common faith. With Pier Giorgio, they knew if you were with them, you were going to be going to church, and it's a Sunday or solemnity. And they even would comment, they would tell him, well, you could, if we're going hiking, you could get a dispensation if there's no church. And Pier Giorgio would say, I know I can get a dispensation from Mass, but I don't want the dispensation from Mass. We're going to Mass if we're going on this hike.
Yeah.
So his friends knew where he stood, and they respected that. He was very bold in his faith. But he did not have, I didn't come across situations where they were, his friends, he was discouraged. If anything, he seemed to always have this positive influence on his friends. In fact, one of them became a priest. One of them became a priest. The one whom he was very close to he was involved, this was Marco Beltramo. He was the first friend to leave the group because he joined the Air Force. And it's important to also see how close Pier Giorgio is with this particular friend, yet he also understands people we love, we cannot possess them. We cannot possess them. We have to be willing to let go. And he understands his friend is going to the Air Force. You can see that the only thing he can do is pray for his friend. He was very close to him. But what he does is he makes him a rosary. He makes him a rosary, and on the rosary he puts a medal of Our Lady of Loretto.
Wow.
And because she is the patroness of the pilots. And he was joining the Air Force, right? So he puts this Our Lady of Loretto on. So he could only offer his friend up to God, pray for him, gives him the rosary, but this importance to be able to let go as well, right? We cannot, the people we love, we would like them to be with us, but we have to be willing. This is where sacrifice comes in. That's why it's called truth, love, and sacrifice. We also need to be willing to make sacrifices, and that means letting go at times.
Yeah. Because sometimes even parents, they are to that point of controlling kids. I guess it's very good to point out that Pier Giorgio didn't possess. And sometimes also we feel discouraged because we cannot really influence them to become better, our friends. But we can only do as much. At least this is, we tried this, but if they continue to sin or they continue to be with bad influence, we can only
Some
do as much.
saints, Father, there are, some saints, I know of one saint, she said that in order for her to increase her holiness, I think this is Kowalska, Sister Faustina of Kowalska, that she said that in order for her to become holier is to experience also people who will be antagonistic to her. Are there also people who are antagonistic to Pier Giorgio Frassati, that he felt that he can even increase his holiness, or even he can approach even Teresa of the Child Jesus, no? He felt that she felt also that some people would not be befriended her. Are there also people antagonistic to? Yeah.
You know, when I look at all the relationships based on his letters, based on the testimonies that were recorded about him, there's nothing that comes across as antagonistic. The only kind of antagonism that might have surfaced is in a political context, but not as a result of friendships or relationships where there's been some kind of an antagonism. But more in a political context where he reacted to certain positions and so forth.
Can you say that he is also a peacemaker?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, his and this is why Pope John Paul II called him the man of 8 Beatitudes when he beatified him, because the Beatitudes, blessed are the peacemakers, is one of the 8 that certainly applies to him as a peacemaker, and then blessed are the pure in heart. This was certainly Pier Giorgio's very, very chaste disposition in his friendships and relationships.
Speaking of Beatitudes, he was called blessed, no? Beatified. He was beatified. When was he beatified, and what made the people look at him to be a blessed?
Yeah, so, well, to be a blessed, you need to have one miracle. And so there was this miracle that was, verified and validated after an inquiry made by the Vatican for the cause of the beatification and canonizations. So a miracle that goes back to 1933. So based on that miracle that had taken place, and then for the canonization there was a second miracle that was goes back to 2011. So the miracles are the first thing, but of course a miracle presupposes the sanctity of a person, and so just by the title that St. John Paul II calls Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, the man of the Beatitudes, we can see how, especially if we just look at his life as a youthful person, he was unquestionably living out these virtues that led him to holiness.
Who moved for the beatification of Pier Giorgio? Who moved that? Is it from the people, from his family, or from somebody close to him?
Well, his sister was the one who was responsible for recording what took place after his death. The sister Luciana was the one who wanted to find out from his friends, the people who knew him well, to get some kind of information about what Pier Giorgio was like, to bring some clarity, because there was some confusion as well as to how he lived out his life. She wanted to bring clarity to how he lived his faith, and the only way you can bring clarity is by finding out what people had to say. What did people witness? How was Pier Giorgio in your presence? What did he do? What did he say? So she was able to collect numerous testimonies from the time he was a child, in fact. From what the housekeepers had seen him doing. Because Pier Giorgio did not write all these things down. One example would be, this would be in Bologna, where the mother had her family's residence. He would ask the gardener, Giuseppe, who had his room on the first floor, in order for Pier Giorgio to be able to make it to Mass without letting anybody know. The Mass was in another town in Europa, probably at 7 o'clock. So around 6:30, early in the morning, Giuseppe would wake up Pier Giorgio. How would he do this so that nobody would hear anything? Pier Giorgio tied a string to his wrist that dropped from the window to the first floor, and then Giuseppe would pull on the string to wake up Pier Giorgio. He was only about 7 or 8 years old at the time, and Pier Giorgio would run to Europa, where there was a shrine of the Virgin Mary. He would go there for Mass. After Mass, he would return home, to be home before 8 a.m. so that his parents would not know that he had left to go to church. So this was something that was recorded by, for example, Giuseppe, who was the very one who pulled on the string. So his sister Luciana was able to record these details that nobody would have known about. Pier Giorgio did not write about them, but she recorded them. So these kind of events that were recorded over his lifetime showed the kind of sanctity that he concretely lived.
That nobody knew, that it was a life hidden from.
Yeah, exactly. This is why when I read the letters that he wrote, his own letters, I was still wondering what's so holy about it. These are just the letters that he wrote to his friends and so forth. But then it's when you read these testimonies, reading the testimonies, then you start to see like stories such as this, and this continues throughout his life. You can see the sanctity of it.
When we say saints, for example, they are looking forward to a mystical experience, or a miracle that happened during his or her lifetime.
Visions,
etc. Was there any particular time that Pier Giorgio Frassati experienced all of this, or was it an ordinary experience that people are looked upon, and these are virtuous experience?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything mystical about his life, like visions or revelations or anything like that. His life was very concrete. So his virtue was concretely manifested in his charity, his concern for the poor, his concern for. He talked about needing to have Christ at the center of our lives, at the center of our community. this for him was emphatic, and this is ultimately how we lived out our faith.
Father, how, by the way, no, we are already talking about his beatification and canonization. How did he die? Because I saw a documentary about it, and it was quite surprising and comical in a sense, because he was dying and then another one in the family was also dying. So they were focusing on his grandmother, I think, and then they didn't even think about him.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's true. He is in Turin. He's dying, but nobody's aware that he's dying. They probably just thought because he's athletic, he must have had an accident, and so he's just he's not able to move. Maybe because he during skiing or running or whatever, just whatever happens during sports events, this could have happened to him, because they knew he was very strong and healthy and he was young. They were not thinking that he could possibly be dying. So they were preoccupied with the grandmother who was in Polone, who was in fact dying. So all the attention was focused on the grandmother in Polone. And they had gone to Polone, and the mother was even thinking of going to Polone herself, because this was her mother who was in Polone, who was on her deathbed. And Pier Giorgio did not want to disturb. You see, he did not like to disturb others, trying to get attention to himself. He tried to always make things seem like he was okay. He did not need to have his mother present. He was all right. He didn't want to disturb. He didn't want to disturb anybody. So nobody could have known really the extent of his suffering and how serious it was. But the only thing on his mind was not what he was suffering or his state of paralysis, but was that it was a Friday and he was supposed to go join the St. Vincent de Paul and bring to the people in the slums waiting for him to bring them injections, medicinal injections, and to bring this pawn ticket, the pawn ticket for Sapa, and the medicinal injections for Converso, their names of the ones who he was going to see. He could not see them, and that was the only thing on his mind. So he writes this note to his friend Giuseppe Grimaldi. He writes this note. The pawn tickets are in my jacket. The injections are for Converso, and so his friend Giuseppe then goes in his jacket and finds the injections that are needed and the pawn ticket. This is the only thing on his mind. He's not thinking about that he's dying or
leaving.
He's not thinking about that at all. And then the mother, she sort of decides. She gives it a second thought, maybe I should stay with him because he doesn't seem to be getting any better. So out of concern, second thought, she stays with Pier Giorgio. So she's with him, and then by the following evening, and if you look at it's his very last note, you can tell the writing is so bad that he's writing it in a state of paralysis, right? He cannot move.
What was his summary from?
Something from polio. He got polio going to the slums. That's where he would have contracted the polio, and because he was very courageous, he wasn't even concerned if he could get any disease or anything like that. And so that's his last note, which is barely legible because of his paralysis. And then the next day, it's a Saturday, July 4th, around 7 p.m. Then he dies.
He was only 24.
In 24, yeah.
24 years old. Like Saint Therese of the Child Jesus. Very young. And after his death, I saw pictures that even his family were surprised to see a lot of people attending his funeral. And these are the poor people that he helped.
Yeah.
So everything was hidden.
Yeah. And next year, and we are very glad to know that next year there is an announcement from the Vatican.
That's why we are having this live.
Yes.
Because of that.
Yeah, by next year we will witness a canonization for Pier Giorgio Frassati. Was it that the other miracle was already approved?
It would have been the second miracle that makes the canonization possible. Yes, the miracle was approved, but technically it's the Pope who makes the official announcement of the canonization. And I think everyone's been so excited and waiting and anticipating that the announcement is that the canonization could be taking place by next summer, but we're anticipating
It is a jubilee year.
It's a jubilee year. And it was a jubilee year when Pier Giorgio died. It was the jubilee year of the jubilee year of peace.
Wow.
Of peace.
What a coincidence.
Coincidence.
Exactly 100 years later.
100 years, yeah. So when 1925.
Yeah.
1925. He died 1925.
Yeah.
He died 1925.
Okay, so
100
it's
years later, and we're
Centenary.
the jubilee year once again.
So what will happen to him when we are going to celebrate his sainthood, his canonization? What kind of celebration are we expecting now?
That I do not know.
Well, we have to change the title of the building of UST. So Blessed. And also our hall here in the parish is called Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati.
What kind of impact do you think, Father, that Blessed saint to be, no? That Pier Giorgio Frassati can give, no, to the young people?
His relevance.
His relevance.
Well, that virtue is possible. Sometimes we think, regardless of the context, virtue is possible, and that's what he teaches us. You don't have to be, as you were saying, a mystic or someone with revelations, or someone who had this, supernatural life that seems unattainable. It was both ordinary, and yet, like any saint, there's always something extraordinary about the saints, right? And that extraordinariness is probably that fidelity to a life of virtue, like being very principled. He learned in the home what values were, what it meant to live them, and he lived by them. Again, it comes down to choice. Do I want to live by these values that I have, or am I going to ignore? We know what the values are, and that's where our conscience comes in. Our conscience tells us we're doing something wrong, so we can listen to our conscience and say, this is the right thing to do, I'm going to do it. And that does take a certain amount of determination, force, and so forth.
We want to have more words from you, Father, but our time is limited.
Wow, it's already 1 hour. 1 hour. We survived our first English episode. Congratulations to all of us.
Maybe we could ask first a message from Brother Ace.
What did you learn? Or what was most striking?
Yeah. The most striking part for me is, it's simply the ordinariness of his life, but he has the courage, the determination to actually have the intention to do good things. It does not only depend on his perhaps the piousness of a person, but your intention to actually do more to other people. Piousness and religiousness of a person is, of course, required for us to become a holy person. But when it comes to dealing with other people, as Jesus Christ told us also, that whatever you do to your brothers, you do unto me. But so, Pier Giorgio Frassati's life is focused also on his how he helped other people. He really had that virtue of sacrifice to be courageous enough to do good things. The intention up until the end of his life. Yeah.
Maybe we could ask also a final message to Father David Belushi, and for our listeners, to those who are watching also over us. What's your message for them?
And also to promote them. Will this be available in the Philippines? Because Father is actually looking for a publisher now.
We will ask.
Hopefully
we will do our part in helping Father David to publish a book here in the Philippines, since he will be canonized anyway. Father.
Yeah, I think that's an important question. What can be done? And I'll end on this. I always mention this in spiritual direction. You mentioned earlier on about the use of social media, whether it's TikTok or Facebook and so forth. The fact is, so much time is wasted and lost on social media. Okay, wasted and lost. And I always tell, whether it's my students or in spiritual direction, read. Take your time. Not even a YouTube, not even a blog. Read the book. Read the book of the saints. You need to read. Exercise. God has given us intelligence. That means we should use our intelligence to read. And by reading, we see words put together. We learn the meaning of these words. We absorb them. We assimilate them. And then we reflect. You see, one of the important aspects of our spiritual life is reading spiritual material to help us. We can't be always using TikTok and think that's going to nourish us spiritually, because it won't. So the time that is spent on social media, especially addressing the youth, use your time to read. You have the time, use it, and that is how you will get help to grow in sanctity. Right? Learning from the saints. We have plenty of saints, many yet to learn. I'm reading right now about the Filipino saint,
Pedro
Calungsod. What an incredible story. Every time I read these stories, I'm so inspired by their courage, their faith. So we can learn a lot just from reading and putting this into our own lives.
Correct.
Thank you, Father David.
Do we have our last words?
First.
For me, just probably two things. One is not always going out, because sometimes people now, they are so indifferent. Sometimes they just think, well, I cannot do any difference at all with particular thing that you do. So just do it. No? If you want to do charity, just do it. No? How would you know that you are helping somebody if you will not be doing it? So before doubting, just do it first. And second thing about Pier Giorgio is he's not trumpeting his actions. No? He doesn't like publish it. That's one thing about Facebook. No? You want everything to be on Facebook. What you eat, what you wear, where you go, no? And you want the like, the comments and all. No? So I think one thing about Pierre, they did not even know that he's dying. No? And he was doing all of this charitable work, so he did not need the approval of people. So, as Father said, you just have the courage to do good in your own special, simple way, hidden ways.
Me, as a final message also, I would like to emphasize, because we were not able to focus on his being a Dominican. Because he's also
I was supposed to ask that, Father. How is he Dominican? Wait ako na. Sige, why?
But because we have not spoken about that being a Dominican, but he is Dominican.
He's called Fraternity of the Rosary, right? But was he third order?
Yes, he's a Dominican, because I think he is also following what Saint Dominica said. He has preached about, he has spoken to God and preached about to God, and he has spoken about God also, no? And because his prayer life, his spiritual life, it's not only focused on his prayer to God, but his prayer is concretized in his serving the poor and serving the people around him, and he wanted for the people to bring, and he wanted to bring all these people to God. It's not just the holiness; it's not isolated to him. The holiness it's not something that people should be deprived of. He wanted everybody in his group to be brought to God, so that they also can feel that the holiness that he has felt, the love and the forgiveness and the patience and justice and understanding that he felt. He wanted also these people for them to feel. So thank you, Father David
and
Ace. And maraming salamat po sa lahat ng nakikinig, at maraming magkikita-kita po tayong muli sa susunod na edisyon na Usapang K.